aspects of the research methodology, and I am quite sure that many of you who are participating in today's workshop are quite conversant with the research methods as well as research methodologies. So at times, it is so assumed, or it so appears that it is an activity like bringing coal to Newcastle. So because many of you knows certain things even better than better than me as well, or many of the experts who will be presenting before you. Now, before formally going to discuss the issues in detail, let me have an idea of the participants in today's workshop, number one, and number two, my own take of the whole thing, or the way I shall try to present my lecture. You may consider it as talk or deliberation, because I feel that if you equally take part in the deliberation, it will be more rewarding, not for you, but also it will be rather rewarding for me as well. So before formally beginning, I would like to give you an outline of what I would like to say and the way I would like to present before you. The first thing is that how do we do literature review, and how the theory is linked to the research problem, and accordingly we shall move on to formulate research questions, thus identifying the gaps in research as well as setting objectives for the research. In doing so, I shall be giving some examples of some published works of mine as well as some of my senior scholars to show how they have used these research questions and how they have dealt with the problems themselves. So this will be the outline of my presentation today. But before starting this deliberation, this discussion, let me have an idea of the participants and their background. If it is, I think it will be also a bit helpful for me to understand the variety of scholars and those who have participated in today's workshop. May I start with any one of you, please? I find him on my screen. I think I'm visible. I think I'm visible. Do you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So please, if you so I can reorient myself, because you know that it is not a kind of straitjacket deliberation. Rather, we have to make it according to your own demands as well as your own kind of own questions. I may have to reorient what I would like to say. So if you please say something about you as well, because it is 2.5 hours lecture session, and you know that it may appear a bit, I think, boring to certain extent, because this type of, we are all, you all as a teacher, you know how it is demanding, how pressing is the situation to carry on these online classes and lecture. Though we are now rather familiar with it, but still it is a kind of pressing exercise for us. So before starting, if we have a informal dialogue among ourselves, I think we can ease into the whole discussion. Please. I find that 24 of you have joined probably, or 23 of the. Please. Deepika Varsne, Sushma Shekhar, Shoma Sorkhel, Shajalpreet Kaur, Rajiv Pura, Payal Mukherjee, Amitabh Bonik, Prosenjit Chandra. And I find one of my colleague is here, is a very, Debjani is here. Debjani is a very brilliant academician, a Fulbright and Charles Wallace scholar. Debjani is there. Good evening. She has also wished me good evening. So please, if you, any one of you may start.
Sir, good evening. I'm Amitabh Bonik.
Yes.
I'm an engineering and management professional and also an independent scholar in the field of social sciences. And I do present papers also in seminars and try to work on social sciences areas. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Amitabh.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Sir, hello, good evening,
Yes,
sir.
please.
My name is Sajalpreet Kaur, and I am a research scholar at University Business School, Punjab University, Chandigarh. My stream, the research stream is accounting and finance, and I'm currently working on microfinance institutions of India and their impact on the livelihood of the people, the beneficiaries of the microfinance.
Fine. Excellent.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, everyone. Myself, Dr. Prosenjit Saha, and I am at present as an assistant professor in Vishwabharati Department of Education, Vidya Bhavan. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening, Sumahan, and good evening, everybody. Sumahan, this is not the platform to see what you said. But what I find interesting about this entire group is that we have got a very mixed group, and we have a lot of PhD scholars who I think will be truly benefited as far as the tools of methodology is concerned. And I'm sure you can really help them in this aspect.
Thank you, Debjani.
You're welcome.
You will continue to give me inputs as well.
Yeah, sure. I will, sure.
So good evening.
Yes.
So this is Shoma Sarkhel. I'm currently working in Sundarbans with the topic human nature interaction along the forest fringe villages of Sundarban Biosphere Reserve.
Very good.
So I'm pursuing my research in Vishwabharati in the Department of Geography, and I'm currently working as an assistant professor in Bakshirat Mahavidyalaya, Kuch Bihar.
Very good. Very good. Many of my scholars belong to geography, discipline of geography, and now they are doing a lot of cultural geography.
Right. I'm looking forward, sir, for new methodologies to be applied in my research in this workshop.
Exactly.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good evening,
Rajiv.
sir.
Yes.
Myself, Rajiv Bora. I am working as an assistant professor in the Department of Economics, Bongaigaon College, Bongaigaon, Assam.
Very good.
Good evening, sir. I am Dr. Payal Mukherjee, Assistant Professor, Department of Bengali, Bhasha Bhavana, Vishwabharati.
Very good. Interesting.
Good evening, sir. Yes, I'm Vidyasagar Kumar. Yes, I'm working in the Department of Education, Dr. D.Y. Patil College of Education, Pimpri, Pune, which is under the Savitribai Phule Pune University, Pune. I'm teaching here educational administration and inclusive education courses. I'm looking the fundamental, what is the fundamentals of the research methods problem, how to write research papers, etc. Very fundamental that it will be helpful for our student also. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Welcome, Vidyasagar. I am also from Vidyasagar University. Welcome, very much welcome to our state and this workshop. Next one, please. It is
Good
interesting.
evening, sir. My
Yes,
name is
please.
Manjari Srivastav, and I am pursuing my PhD in from Lucknow University, and I am working on impact of social media among youth in Lucknow district. Thank you so much.
And your discipline is sociology or media?
No, I am from home science department, home science stream, sir.
Home science. Okay. Good.
Thank you, sir.
Very good. Vivek
Good
Kumaran.
evening, sir. Yeah,
Yes,
good
please.
evening, sir. I'm Vivek Kumaran. I'm doing PhD. I am a research scholar from in social work department, Sri Shankaracharya University, Kerala. My research area is gender and sexuality, especially lesbian.
Very good. Very good. Very good. Next, Techen Bhutia. Oh, Aishwarya Sharma, please.
Yes, good evening, sir. My name is Aishwarya Sharma. I'm a research scholar. I'm pursuing a PhD from Himachal Pradesh. The area of my research, the title of my thesis is Exploring the Character of Draupadi Through Current Perception, a critical analysis of Mahabharata.
Your discipline, academic orientation.
Yes, sir.
What is your discipline, academic discipline? To which discipline you belong?
Sir, English literature.
English literature. Okay, fine.
Yes, sir.
Hello.
Yes,
Hello.
please.
Good evening, sir. So my name is Dichan Bhutia, and I am currently a PhD research scholar in the Center for Inner Asian Studies, JNU, and I'm working on the Trans-Himalayan trade along the Chumbi Valley in Tibet in the 19th century.
Your discipline, history?
Yes, sir, it's history.
Yes.
Thank
Very
you.
good. Very good.
Good evening,
And
sir.
you are from Darjeeling or Sikkim? Dechen?
So I'm from Kalimpong.
You are from?
Kalimpong.
Kalimpong, Darjeeling. Yes.
Yes. Thanks.
Fine. Very good.
Good evening, sir.
Yes.
I am Ashish, currently pursuing my PhD in geography from the University of Bardwan.
Fine.
Thank you.
And your topic of research?
So basically, I am highly passionate about physical geography. Currently, I am engaged in climate change adaptation and coastal geomorphology.
Okay. Very good.
Myself,
Hello,
Raman
sir.
Bhankar, lecturer in history. My field is cultural history and ethnoarchaeology. Thank you, sir.
Ethnoarchaeology. You are from history department.
Yes, sir.
Jagmohan, you are from history. Yes.
Yes, sir.
Ethnoarchaeology. The topic is quite archaeological and anthropological in a sense. Ethnoarchaeology.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Fine. Some of you have, I find, connectivity problem because the talk and your speech is being interrupted. I find it's no problem. If you have any problem, you tell me in inbox to repeat. I shall try to accommodate it, respond it accordingly. Okay? Don't worry. Please, Sushmita, I think.
Good evening, sir. Myself,
Yes,
Sushmita Chandra, research scholar, UGC SRF, Department of Geography, Vishwabharati Shantiniketan. Presently, I am working on particularly women of Sundarban, actually the role of women in forest protection in Sundarban Biosphere Reserve. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Welcome.
Good evening, sir. I am Tanya Paul, and currently I am doing my research. I am doing a PhD research scholar at Assam University. I'm from Commerce Department.
You are from Commerce. Yes. Please. Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening, sir. I'm Anamika Muktan, and I'm working presently as Assistant Professor at the Department of Economics and Politics, Vishabharati, and I'm also pursuing my research on the topic quality of employment in India.
Employment in India.
Yes,
Political
sir.
science is your discipline.
No, economics.
Economics. Okay. You may find that this interaction is a bit kind of prototypical kind of exchanges that you are talking about yourself, but it gives me a very interesting scenario of the kind of diversity that we have among the participants as well as in their disciplines, because some of you belong to more quantitative kind of research oriented towards more quantitative kind of research, and some of you have rather qualitative bent of research. So though my topic does not relate to any of the techniques or methods of research, but it is kind of a general introduction to what to choose as a research problem and how to do the literature review. And in this deliberation, what I shall be trying to communicate and tell you that if you have any input, because many of you are already faculties in different departments and you are pursuing your researches, so always you are confronting many different situations which may raise some questions among questions which may be addressed which in today's deliberation as well, and I shall try to clarify what I understand about these research issues. So going to my discipline, I think we don't have any scholars from anthropology, though my discipline is anthropology, and we are to certain extent generalist in choice or by our professional identity, though we focus also in particular issues, and we have some subdisciplinary divisions to which we usually concentrate. And my subdisciplinary specialization is social cultural anthropology, and I would try to rather deal with the qualitative aspects of research mostly, but since I have already told you it's a kind of general introduction, therefore such a kind of division between qualitative and quantitative research will not generally arise. But still, I have more examples from qualitative research, and many of you, those who are from Bengali or from history or English literature, even the cultural geography, all of you mostly focus on a qualitative kind of research. I would not like to elaborate what is qualitative, quantitative, because you all know that. What I would like to start is from the concept of methodology. And we know that in short, methodology constitutes a whole range of strategies and procedures that include developing a picture of an empirical world. What we usually try to do with our methodologies or methodologies is to develop a picture of empirical world and asking questions about that world and turning these questions into researchable problems. So our strategy of research through these methodological trope is to go from some questions to a researchable problem. And today's title of today's deliberation is basically that research problem, and also it is related to the research questions, and also to find out the best means of doing so. in methodology, it is also attempted to find out the best means to do so, and that involve choices and about the methods and data to be sought, the development and use of concept and interpretation of findings. This is in a nutshell what Herbert Blumer suggested is the idea of research method. And those who are from sociology know it very well, that the idea of the history of our social science research methodology is not that old, and Emile Durkheim's work, The Rules of Sociological Method, published in 1895, can be said to be the first research method books. So it is more than a little bit 100 years old, our history of research methodology study. And also we find that another sociologist, Max Weber, talked about research method. But seriously, the studying of research methodology on the history of research methodology can be dated to taking a very prominent position in research with the emergence of Chicago School, as well as during the 1930s and 40s. And then gradually after 1950s, there was a deluge of research methodology works. So with these few topics, with this very brief introduction on the beginning of research, this is true about all the discipline which deal with methodology and research issues. This is a general history that it is basically started with social science, sociological orientation in 1895 with Emile Durkheim's Emile Durkheim's work. Now, in doing research, the first and foremost thing is to identify a topic. You have to identify a topic. And what are the ways that we can identify a topic? There are several suggestions, several ways. One way is to draft a brief title. How do you start? Actually, what I'm trying to communicate you more like a hand-on kind of thing that we can do in our practice. But many of you are well into the research. You have already chosen your topic and also fixed up. But still, as beginning comments, starting comments, let us think that we must have a title written down, drafting a title, and that working title may be developed as a beginning of a topic. And Wilkinson in 1991, Wilkinson, he provides a useful advice for creating a title. How a title of a research can be framed. His suggestion was that be brief and avoid wasting words, and eliminate unnecessary words such as an approach to or a study of. This type of words should be avoided, as suggested by Wilkinson. And use a single title or a double title may be advisable, but it should not be more cumbersome. And the suggested word limit, what they say, that it must be within 12 or to 15 words may be used in a standard research title. That is his suggestion. We may take his suggestion or not, but I find it is very useful to draft a title for your research before fixing or finalizing a topic. The second strategy is for topic or developing a research topic is to pose the topic as a big question. What question needs to be answered in the proposed study? A researcher might ask, what treatment is based for depression. If you want to work on some psychological topic or psychological issue or any some social kind of thing, what was the impact of Ayla on the women of Sundarban or the fishermen of Sundarban? So this type of question may be directly asked for fixing. So one thing is that to draft a topic that you are planning, a tentative topic, a working title, or second thing, you may start with a question about your topic. But all this fixing of this identification of topic must be based on a survey of literature, and through survey of literature you may problematize or you may go to the problem of research. Initial research question or some topic may come in your mind, but you have to finalize that topic going through doing a thorough survey on the topic and gradually moving to the research problem. So now the point is to do research literature review of literature. On the basis of that, you will fix up a research problem. Now, what are the purposes of research review of literature? Why literature review is done? Number one thing is that it shares with the reader the results of the other studies that are closely related to the study being reported. The first thing is that it shares with the reader the result of other studies that are closely related to the study being reported. Number two, it relates a study to the larger ongoing dialogue in the literature about a topic, filling gaps, and extending, number three, extending prior studies. So, first thing is that it helps to know about what works have already been done on this particular topic. It relates to the study to the larger ongoing dialogue in the literature about a topic, so that it may help to fill the gap and also to assist in extending the prior studies. Number four, another important purpose is that it provides a framework for establishing the importance of the study, as well as a benchmark for comparing the results of a study with other findings. All or some of the reasons may be the foundation for writing the scholarly literature for a study. So it provides a framework. In a nutshell, seeing what corpus of work has already been done, to compare with the existing literature, to carry out further dialogue on the topic, and to extend the knowledge and or to expand the knowledge. And this is the idea of locating, identifying the research gaps through literature review, and this gap is to be fulfilled. And whenever you will go for any kind of research, the first thing is that the question is asked that what knowledge contribution your work is going to make. All the works, research works, are done with the single, if you are asked to mention the single purpose or the most important purpose of research, in a single sentence, it is that what your research is going to contribute to the existing knowledge. So this knowledge contribution, and this knowledge contribution can only be done if the research gap is identified. And the purpose of literature review is to identify, one of the most important purposes of this literature review is to identify the research gap. Now, we find that various scholars have talked about how the literature review should be done, and how to interrogate the questions in literature review, and how do you do literature review. What I do in case of in case of literature review is to first of all go through the text to see what are the objectives of that particular work. Number two, what is the methodology to fulfill that objectives or those objectives, how the work has been done. Second thing, and what is the main findings. In it, you may also look for the research question, the basic argument, anything you may like to see, you may do during your literature review. And whenever you are writing the literature review, the best way that I would suggest to see what this particular work has done and how it is related to your present work. If so, you may thematically arrange a particular literature under review in the context of your study. And accordingly, surveying all the literature, you may identify, isolate certain themes which may be used while developing your own study, and focusing any of the things or nullifying any of the things, setting aside, questioning, whatever it may be. But accordingly you will try to answer your own question, finding the gap in all these previous researches, arrange them thematically, theoretically, methodologically. Themes may be of different categories, theoretical, empirical, or methodological themes. But accordingly, you will address your own question, identifying the gap through such review. Now, Cooper, one of the leading scholars in research methodology studies, suggests that literature reviews can be integrative. The first thing, it should be integrative, with the researchers summarizing broad themes in research in the literature review. So integrative means all these dimensions are taken into consideration, and accordingly you will focus one or the other. This model is popular in dissertation proposal and as well as thesis writing. A second form is recommended by Cooper, that is a theoretical review. So one is integrative kind of review and another is theoretical review, in which the researcher focuses on extant theory that relates to the problem under study. This form appears in journal articles in which the author integrates the theory into the introduction to the study. And third form that is suggested by Cooper is a methodological review, in which the researcher focuses on the methods and the definition, working definition or operational definition, whatever suits his particular research topic. These reviews may provide not only a summary of studies, but also an actual critique of the strengths and weaknesses of the method in, in use, as well as some authors use this form in dissertations and reviews of related literature in their own study. Now, there are some other suggestions as well, that how do you do literature review? For example, Creswell has also written a book on research design, and in which he has given some suggestion how to do literature review. Okay, if you have any question, and if you do not understand, I may switch to other language. I'm not very fluent or comfortable with Hindi, but still, if you would like to like any further clarification, please. Now regarding literature review, let me take the suggestions of Creswell. Cooper has given his idea of how literature review can be done, and he has talked about 3 types of literature review which can be done in journal article or thesis or dissertation. One is integrative, second one is theoretical, and third one is methodological. Now coming to Creswell is suggesting us that in a qualitative study, use of the literature sparingly in beginning of the plan in order to convey an inductive design, unless the qualitative strategy type requires a substantial literature orientation at the outset. So in a qualitative, let me repeat it, in a qualitative study, it is suggested that use that as he is suggesting, I'm quoting from him, use the literature sparingly in the beginning of the plan in order to convey an inductive design, unless the qualitative strategy type requires a substantial literature orientation at the outset. So the simple thing is that you tell what work has been done, and from those work you try to come to some of the generalization, induction, and tell something about your own work relating to these generalization. Secondly, consider the most appropriate place for literature in a qualitative study and base the decision on the audience for the project. Keep in mind that placing it at the beginning to frame the problem, placing it in a separate section, and using it at the end of a study to compare and contrast with the findings of the current study. So literature review may be done differently. One can do it at the beginning. If it is done so, the basic purpose is to arrive at a particular research problem, or to pose certain research question, or to frame certain research objectives. This is basically the way. You can use the literature review in the text to relate the study to other study, and at the end, using it in the intermediately may be done for the comparative purpose, similarly as it is done for comparison when it is placed at the end of the discussion. Thirdly, he has suggested that use the literature in a quantitative study deductively as a basis for advancing research questions or hypotheses. So in case of deductive research, for example, in case of economics, or in at times it may be done in mathematics, that the logic of inquiry is to certain extent deductive. In that case, in case of such quantitative study, quantitative research, the literature review may be used deductively. So that means you are writing or referring to a particular research and deducing something from that study, and accordingly you will framing the question. Next suggestion is that use the literature to introduce the study, describe related literature in a separate section, and compare extant literature with findings in a quantitative study plan. If a separate review of literature is used, consider whether the review will consist of integrative summary, theoretical reviews, or methodological reviews. A typical practice in dissertation writing is to advance an integrative review. Though it is the standard practice to advance an integrative review, but I would suggest that one must take a theoretical review as well as a methodological review due in his or her literature review, because we don't know what sort of research question we may be posing at the end. And if we pose a particular question, I think that it must have a theoretical as well as a methodological dimension. So better you may take integrative approach, but also refer to these theoretical and methodological kind of reviews. In a mixed method, always it is seen that they suggest a kind of integrative type of review. So with these few suggestions, when we embark upon a literature review, what will be the steps? What steps we can take in literature review so that we can gradually move on to the research problem? The first step is being by identifying keywords useful in locating materials in an academic library at a college or university. These keywords may emerge in identifying the topic, or they may result from preliminary readings in library. So when you are doing a particular research, you have to literature review, you have to identify certain keywords. For those working on the condition of women in among the tribal people, so he or she has to isolate the keywords, the women, condition of women or status of women, tribal, and this way you have to identify such keywords, and accordingly you go for searching these what has been written on this particular topic, on women, on tribal, or on the condition of the women. So accordingly you will find, while discussing on women, the tribal women has been referred to or not, or when you are working on condition of the women, it is to be seen whether any discussion has been made separately on the condition of the tribal women. So accordingly it will be done. Okay, many of you are talking about the sharing of slides. Actually I am not I have not reached the point where you can have the slides to be shared, but still if you would like to see the slides, Mr. Dwayashankar ji, please change the slide, go to the next slide. Please go to the next slide. Next slide is on the definition of research. When I shall go to the research question, I start with just a single liner on research and then accordingly move on to that. So let us, actually we do not do that literature review very seriously, and as an editor of 2-3 journals, as managing editor and as editor, I have seen that many of these scholars, those who are submitting their paper, have a very poor literature review, very poor review of literature, except some of the international journals published by the very renowned publication houses, say for example Taylor and Francis or Sage or Springer. There they look into it very rigorously, and they ask for a rigorous literature review, thorough literature review. But in case of in our national journals, not for all, but in many of the journals in social sciences, we find scant literature review, or not perfunctorily the literature review has been done, it is seen. The reason is that we do not ask this question, pose these questions. Therefore, our literature review does not reflect that rigor, that meticulous exercise which should be done in case of a research. Therefore, it is better if we follow certain steps while formulating, because research cannot be done with instructions. Research will come from within. And in doing so, you have to follow certain rules, certain principles that can be communicated to you, instructed to you. But whether you will follow it or not, it is up to you. But if you follow some of the instructions, as I have followed and I have also got result, I think it will be better and it will be rewarding for your own work as well. So the first thing is that while doing some research, you identify the key words in the title that must be searched into the library or into the internet or any other database. Number two, so this is the first thing. Second is that with these keywords in mind, next go to the library or search the sources and catalogs, and accordingly earlier it was some card methods were there. You will prepare certain cards. Now there are a number of softwares that will help you to isolate the books and the journals and the papers, and that will help you to gather the information that you would like to have. Next thing is that, and you may use some personal sources that will also be helpful, some other archival material as well, whatever you may like. But you first of all, you have to point out, identify certain keywords. Thirdly, that try to locate about reports of research in article on books related to research on the particular topic. It is also useful if you go through some of the reports, reviews of work, because reviews of work, say for a book review or report on any publication, that will also help you to undertake a literature review. Next step you may take, or another step you may take, that using these initial group of articles, books and papers, look at the articles and all the other materials that would be of particular focus. So first of all, you will have a general kind of resources, then you will isolate the more important kind of resources. Then the next step is to formulate a literature map, that from where to where you will move. You may arrange them according to the chronology, according to the coverage of the topic. So one is for the entire West Bengal, another is for Sundarban, another is for Western region, Purulia, Bankura, whatever the case may be. So you have to then formulate a literature map for these kind of literature review. And then you will summarize the entire thing and you will write down accordingly the suggestion of which I have given already. But keep in mind that there must be some notes on the empirical, theoretical, and methodological aspects of these texts or literature. Now, considering all these dimensions, one can now identify or locate the gaps in the previous research which are to be addressed by the researcher. Accordingly, he or she will frame the research question. Moving to research problem. Now, for moving to the research problem, let us try with a few words on what is this kind of research that we are talking about, and accordingly we are going to research problem. So what is this research? Please, next slide, please. Research is a process of steps used to collect and analyze information to increase our understanding of a topic or issue. There are hundreds of definitions of research, but for our own understanding or for a general understanding, it is better that we frame these definition in a rather general term. That is, research is a process of steps used to collect and analyze information to increase our understanding of a topic of research. And in single word, I have already mentioned that it is to contribute to the existing knowledge. And from this definition, we can deduce that it basically has three steps. One is posing a question, collection of data, and presenting answer to that question. So now the research question comes. While defining the very word research, or while conceptualizing the research, the research question of this research question comes, and the purpose is to fulfill in these undertaking, this exercise, through answering this question in research, is to gain familiarity with a phenomenon or to achieve new insight into a particular topic. So, with the conceptualizing of research, the research question comes because through research we try to answer this question as research aims to gain familiarity with a phenomena. Number two, to portray accurately the characteristics of a particular individual, situation, or a group. Number three, to determine the frequency with which something occurs or with which it is associated with something. I'm talking about different types of research. When I'm talking about that a particular research is being used to give a familiarity of something, I'm talking about exploratory kind of research. When I'm talking about that it is portraying something, it is a descriptive kind of research. When I am trying to find the association between two or certain things, then it is a diagnostic kind of research. And when we are trying to test a causal relationship, then it's a kind of hypothesis testing kind of research. So whether the lockdown has a very damaging effect on the economy. So there may be two hypotheses. Yes, there is some damaging effect, and another hypothesis will tell that no, it will not have any damaging effect. So any of these two hypotheses may be answered through your research. So the research will also be used for hypothesis testing. Now the question is, what the theoretical grounding will have in case of a research? How the research problem will have a theoretical grounding? This is another important question. But before dealing with this particular topic, that how the theory is related to the research, or how the theory has some connection with the research problem, we may have some question, or we may take some question if you like. Just a minute.
Hello, good evening, sir. Hello. Are you hearing, sir?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Please.
I want to know why that how to formulate the research title, especially there many students are facing so many issues. How to formulate quickly with the help of research review, past research, past thesis, and whatever the methodology, etc. And what are the steps formulating quickly the research title? It is after the formulating the some proposal, some introduction, then I will try to formulate a research title, or this is initially this is first I have to formulate the research title, then I have to write the introduction section, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay, there may be two ways. One is that I have already talked about it. One is just to think of a topic and frame a working title on the topic. This may be one way of writing a title. Another is that just posing a question. Now let me give one example how the title can be framed. Let me give you a research work that is on the marine fisher folk. The title of that this particular thesis has been submitted to University of Calcutta, and the title of the thesis that the marine fisher folk of Jambudip, a socio-cultural study. There is no particular intention of my just referring to it. I was just going through this particular thesis, and therefore I am mentioning it. The marine fisher folk of Jambudip, which is an island near Sundarban, a socio-cultural study. This is the title of this particular thesis. Now you see, this is a very simple, framed in a very, very simple way. What it gives you an idea of a community, of a place, and nature of study. So in a particular title of research, you must give an idea what you are going to do, and give it not in any vague, any cryptic manner. Be straight. Try to point out the community or people or the kind of study you are going to undertake. So this is the simple thing. And that you can do before you undertake a literature review, or you may undertake after you do some literature review. But it is always advisable that you should do some background work, some background study before you start research, and also I have fixed on a particular topic, or you just make your mind for taking off a particular topic of research. So this is the simple way I think should be taken, and we have some example as well. But when you will move to publishing this, another stage, or talk about the marketability of a particular research work, that it will be published in a book form, sometimes the title may be changed, and some metaphor, some rhetorical use of language may be seen. For example, this particular study, when published in the form of a book, then it was named The Moon and Net, the study of a transient fisherman community of Jammu. So you see how this particular thesis, when published in the form of a book, then the title changed. So fixing a research title, formulating a research title, always or should be formulation of research title should be done keeping in mind that you are giving the idea in as simple way as possible without any dubious connotation. So this is my idea. Okay, so if you don't have any other question, let me move on to the role of theory to research. Let me refer to scholars Kutnes and Silverman, who define theory as an explanatory statement used to help explain and understand relations among variables, how they operate and how the processes are involved. The importance of theory lies in its ability to assist the researcher to identify and organize the connections among various phenomena that may seem unrelated. So, to see the relationship between a particular research and the research problem with the theory is to show how certain unrelated themes are connected, that it can be understood by going deep into the theory. Now, researchers need a particular theoretical perspective from the outset to help them answer why questions and to explain various cases or units of analysis in certain situations. Theories determine the relationship between concepts that are carefully defined, ways to measure those concepts, and what influences them. Without theory, the students tend to come up with questions that are not thought through thoroughly for a particular setting, and are therefore not meaningful for the members of that context. Their methods may not be appropriate for the situation, and their result may be hard to justify, if not unfounded. Therefore, theory should drive the research process from beginning to end, providing a framework for action and for understanding. Wheeler states that the way theory is structured determines how the research proceeds. So while you will pose a question, then it is the theory that will determine how the research will proceed. He argues that the value of viewing theory or theory-driven research as an empirical research. The theoretical frame may be either tacit or implicit, or overt or explicit. Tacit or implicit theory might be described as what you think is going on in the study, while overt or explicit theory would be the specific theoretical framework that assists in the identification of important concept, operational definition, development of research question, and interpretation of the data. Theory drives our action in daily life and in research, whether or not we are aware of the theoretical frame. There are many examples of how the tacit theoretical work or overt theoretical work can be done. Romila Thapar from Lineage to State, I think it has a very overt kind of theoretical exercise, that how the lineage, a particular structural phenomena change to another structural frame. So this has a very interesting kind of overt use of theory. But while talking about this particular research, the Marine Fisher folk, he has used some functionalist framework that each and every component of a society or social formation does certain function, but he has never explicitly mentioned that this particular theory is being applied here. So there may be different ways of using theory in a particular research. The works of others found in literature review on the topic under study further provide them with a theoretical framework for developing and understanding their research. The literature provides a basis for understanding, a basis for identifying gaps in literature, and basis for making comparison between one's research findings with the existing literature. So again, these kind of exercise are relating the literature review, theoretical grounding, and the research problem. Now, in this regard, we may refer to another scholar, Barbara Cowlich. She has given certain examples how the theoretical grounding influences the research question. Cowlich investigated the Muskogee, that Creek culture, and in which there was a matrilineal subculture in the patrilineal culture, focuses on the women's choices and their perspective of their role in the culture and how their roles differ from those of men in that culture, while a culture theory approach. So there are various theoretical approaches. Now take this particular case of Barbara Cowlich. When the approach was from feminist perspective, then the question was that how the matrilineal complex was working under patrilineal structure. This was the question. Now, when the theoretical frame relates to ethnicity or identity theory, the question was that what it means to be a Creek woman. When the theoretical perspective is critical, then the question is, how do the women of this Creek culture perceive that their role as a leaders differ from that of the male leaders. So, according to your theoretical frame, the question may be changed. Therefore, the theory then influences the kind of question what you will try to pose. This is the basic idea that we can say about how the theoretical grounding of research problem can be addressed. And there were some ideographic and nomothetic schools. I think you know what is ideographic and what is nomothetic kind of philosophical orientation of research. Ideographic kind of research is basically the subjective kind of inquiries in literature, in social cultural anthropology, and also to certain extent in sociology. They are basically ideographic kind of research. Whereas in economics or in commerce or mathematics, nomothetic kind of approach, means more positivist kind of approach is taken to. This theoretical grounding also influences the nature of question in a research. The questions lead the researcher to use a particular methodology guided by a theory that is appropriate to answer this question. Theory and methodology also direct the researcher's role in selecting and interacting with the participant and in determining the data that should be collected to answer the research question. Theory also determines the one's approach to analyze the data collected and how one interprets, presents, and applies the findings of research. So this way, the theory is highly or in many ways related to the research problem. Now the question is that what is then the research problem? A research problem is a statement about an area of concern, a condition to be improved, a difficulty to be diminished, or a troubling question that exists in the scholarly literature, in theory, or in practice that points to the need for meaningful understanding and deliberate investigation. That is a research problem. In simple word, that there are two understandings. One is a very straightaway understanding of a problem, and another idea is problematizing of a particular position. These two things are equally important in framing a research problem. Let me cite some examples in this regard. While theoretically talking about the ethical issues in research, just a minute please, let me
Hello, sir. Are you there? Shankar, sir.
Yes, I'm there. I was just I went to close the door.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Any problem?
Some outside noises were coming. Please, you change the slide, Dashankar ji.
Sure, sir.
You please change the slide. They are eager to see what is there. Please. I think it is not working properly. I think it is not working properly. Okay. So, for example, that I was talking about that how a particular position may be problematized in a research, that particular part with regard to the ethical standing. If we have a question like this, that while doing participant observation, it is fine that we are taking consent of the people whom we are studying or among whom we are conducting our research. But my point is that the problematic is that do the people who are giving consent categorically understand what these consent actually mean, or whether they participate in that particular world of deliberation, academic deliberation, or do their position or the power question relate to that of or equal to that of the researcher, then what does these informed consent actually mean? If those who are giving consent and those who are receiving consent are not in the do not belong to the same socio-economic, socio-political or social cultural milieu, then whether any negotiation is possible or not. This is a kind of problematization of ethical consent in research. So apparently, such theoretical or some such critical understanding of the situation may not be there on the surface, or it may not be a very practical kind of problem, such as a problem of an infection or infectious disease, or spreading of a virus, or not using a mask to ward off the spread of virus. Such kind of problem, lackadaisical attitude, that may create some problem. It may not be such kind of practical problem, but there may be situation which lie under the surface, and these are to be problematized while you are doing the research. So this way, the idea of research problem comes in two ways. One is a directly related to certain practical problem, very much apparent to our research universe, in our research universe. Another is the problematization of a particular situation. That is also important for research inquiry. But to define, to understand research problem in simple word, it is a statement about an area of concern, a condition to be improved. All these are practical concern, practical issues, a difficulty to be eliminated, but it may be a theoretical, a methodological difficulty as well, or a troubling question, a theoretical question that I was talking about, the how to address that particular, then the issue of consent, informed consent or ethical consent in research, how to address that that disquieting or that critical question. So it is also a research problem that exists in scholarly literature, in theory or in practice, that points to the need for meaningful understanding and deliberate investigation. Now, when you are thinking about that the status of women or or problem or the use of social media, it has some questions which is actually problematized for in the context of research. We have assumed as an a priori that the situation which is prevailing there might have some other dimension as well. Therefore, there are conditions rather than condition. When there are conditions, then it must be that there must be some reasons behind these conditions, and then to understand these reasons. So we don't have that understanding why these conditions are prevailing. Not a particular situation, rather than situations are prevailing. Some women are powerful, some women have more, or some individuals have more power, some have less power. So apparently, yes, it may appear that yes, there may be people with inequality, uneven distribution of power, unequal distribution of power. But this issue of empowerment raises certain question why. And when we don't have this question, it's a problematic situation that we don't have this question. Our research basically tries to give an answer to these hidden problematics that lie under the surface of the existing situation, or that are not apparent in general terms. Thus, the research problem is important, and research problem is necessary, is a necessary undertaking to be understood in research. Now the question is, what are the objectives that these research problems serve? Number one, research problem introduces the reader to the importance of the topic being studied. The reader is oriented to the significance of the study and the research question or hypothesis to be followed. So it introduces the reader to the importance of the topic being studied. So this is one of the important objectives of research problem. Secondly, it places the problem into a particular context that defines the parameters of what is to be investigated. So it contextualizes, research problem contextualizes a particular issue, a particular problem, and also fixes the parameters to be taken into consideration. So this is another importance of a research problem. I think now it is quite clear what is meant by research problem. It may be of different nature. It may be a simple question, a problematic situation, or it may be a theoretical conceptual situation that is to be addressed in a particular research, posing certain questions for research problem. And number 3, it provides the framework for reporting the results and indicates what is probably necessary to conduct the study and explain how the findings will present this information. So it provides the framework. Now, how we will select the problem? How to select the problem? The first thing is that to select the problem, it will be better to take up certain issues at hand, avoiding controversial subject in the beginning. Secondly, too narrow or too vague problems should be avoided. The subject selected for research should be familiar and feasible so that the related research material or sources of research are within one's reach. So you cut your coat according to your clothes. সুতরাং তোমার if you want to do your study, you first assess your capability and your resource base. Accordingly, you select a particular problem in your research. The importance of the subject, the qualification and training of a researcher, the costs involved, time factor are also other criteria that must be considered while selecting a problem. The selection of a problem must be preceded by a preliminary study. So when you have already made up your mind, you will be doing your work on that particular topic, you should have a preliminary study before finally selecting the topic. Now, to define a problem has some other aspects as well. Number 1, statement of the problem in a general way, understanding the nature of the problem, surveying the available literature. These things are there in the slides. Actually, if it was shown, you will find that these points were mentioned in the slides. Now, these are the basic things which are to be pointed out here. So they were given in the slides. The first thing is that statement of a problem in a general way. The problem should be stated in broad general way, keeping in mind or keeping in view either some practical concern or some scientific or intellectual interest is there. So the first thing is that you will be stating the problem in a very general term. For this purpose, the researcher must immerse himself thoroughly in the subject matter concerning which he wishes to pose a problem. In case of social research, it is considered advisable to do some field observation, and as such, the researcher may undertake some sort of preliminary survey or what is often called pilot survey. So you may take some pilot survey, and then you will, while talking about the problem, you must write on it in a very general way in the beginning. Now, understanding the nature of the problem. Second thing is that the problem is to be understood with regard to its origin and nature of study. With regard to its origin and nature of study. The best way of understanding the problem is to discuss it with those who first raised it or done work in it to find out how the problem originally came about and with what objectives in view. Thirdly, one must survey the available literature related to that problem. And lastly, some discussion with the expert or persons who have concerns on these problem. Some discussions are necessary before developing this problem and collecting useful information on this problem. Various new ideas can be developed through such exercise. So it is advisable that a researcher must discuss his problem with his colleagues and also teachers, senior scholars, and to get an idea about these and similar problems and how they are addressed. There must be an exercise for rephrasing, to rephrase the research problem into a working proposition. And this working proposition will lead to the in an interrogative manner in some research question, into some will help to develop some research questions. This research question will serve the purpose of research objectives. Specifying the research question is the methodological point of departure of scholarly research in both natural and social sciences. A research question around which one can center his or her research. The framing of research questions should be clear, focused, concise, and arguable. This will be the features of a research question. Research questions help writers focus their research by providing a path through the research and writing process. The specificity of a well-developed research question helps writers avoid, or researchers avoid, the all-about paper and work towards supporting a specific arguable thesis. So the research question basically streamline the inquiries, investigation of a particular research. Initially, I was talking about the thesis, that the work on the Jambudip fishermen. It was an interesting study in which an anthropologist, Bikash Rai Chaudhuri, who worked in Anthropological Survey of India, did this research under Professor Surojit Chandra Sinha. Professor Surojit Chandra Sinha was the Vice Chancellor of Vishwabharati, also a Director of Center for Studies in Social Sciences, and Director of Anthropological Survey of India as well. He was two-time Fulbright scholar as well. Yeah. He guided this particular research, supervised this particular research on the fishermen community who would go for sea fishing used to stay for 3-4 months in an island of Sundarban named Jambudip. They would catch the fish, some of which were sold instantly, rest were dried, and these dried fish were later marketed. But it was a transient kind of existence where people from different places used to gather and to camp for few months and then again return and would revisit next year. This particular study, while talking about research question, now while doing this research, the scholar had certain questions. What types of questions, or what were the research questions he had? First of all, number one, have some castes, Hindu or Muslim, specialized in marine fishing vis-a-vis inland or riverine fishing? This was the first question. So the caste and community background, take the theoretical position of the discipline of anthropology, this particular social science discipline, which attempted to study the variations, the cultural variations. And when they were studying the fishing communities, they were trying to see that, or that particular researcher was trying to see the variation across the religious communities to see the specialization in fishing. Therefore, these a priori understanding, theoretical positioning, grounding of the scholar provoked him to frame these research question as the first research question. The second research question was that how do the marine fisher folk adjust themselves to their special techno-economic task? So this is related to the question of adaptation, cultural adaptation, the traditional knowledge. What adaptive devices in social organization do they develop? I was talking about social and cultural adaptation. And what kind of knowledge of ecology and technology they have developed? These are the questions. If you try to understand this question, and when you will be doing work on these questions, you can depict, you can portray the life of the people, their technology, their social organization, their strategies for adaptation in that environmental condition where water was a scarcity, when it was surrounded by water in all its sides, and it is pretty away from the mainland. So in this particular environment, in this particular situation, how do they adjust? And the third question was, how do the marine fisher folk recruited from different villages and families organize themselves for common pursuit? Again, the question of territoriality, spatiality, how the spatial divisions, how the spatial variations are reflected. How do they maintain a moral order You know it very well that all our queries are basically philosophical. So when you are talking about a community, the basic question in social science was to understand how this moral community is working, how human being is working as a moral community. This was the basic question in social science, initially posed in sociology, that what is the glue that keeps individuals in society. And when you do history, when you do economics, when you do education, literature, anthropology, sociology, everywhere you are actually trying to answer these moral questions. Moral question of moral community. The person belonging to economics is trying to answer this question from his or her perspective, that it is economic exchange. It is the economic man. It is the principle of maximization and economization or economizing, which keep the individuals, the humans in the society, in solidarity. This is from economics. And those who are from education, you are trying to understand how the education, how the public instructions are actually building that community. So therefore, the basic question remains same across the disciplines in social science. And we are actually philosophizing while undertaking any particular research. Thus the questions, research questions, in there, if we take out the skin of its apparent framing, then we can understand what it actually means, rather connotes. Thus, when the question is how these community, research question is how this community is organized, people in a transient community is organized on the basis of their village and family, then we are trying to address this question. And then we are also addressing in the next question, how do they maintain a moral order as a transient community living in the fishing camp away from their natal villages during the entire fishing season, because now they are not within the social within their society, within the precinct of their own familiar social milieu. They are now in a place which is basically never lived by them, which is basically an island deserted after some time. And they are not drawn from a single place, they are from different places. So in this particular situation, what are the factors? So this is another important question. And how do these primary procedures of fishing, of fishing trade operate under the stronghold of the chain of financiers? So some practical issues, some practical questions that are also coming. So in this way, you will find that the research questions are always very important to frame the question, frame the particular research topic. And if you go through these questions, you can also have an indication of the gaps that is there in the earlier research in a very standard kind of research, because after the literature review, the researcher will talk about the gaps in earlier research, and accordingly he will or she will frame the question. He or she will pose the problem, and this problem will be elaborated with the questions, research questions, which will address the gaps in research. And accordingly, that when these questions are framed in a different way, to answer these questions, we shall accordingly set the objectives. For example, let me cite another example of research question that is on the Andaman Islanders. The name of the book is Among the Endangered Hunter-Gatherers, an Anthropological Exploration in Andaman Island by Joyanto Sarkar. He was also a very renowned anthropologist, director of Anthropological Survey of India. He lived among the Jarwas and one of the international authorities on Jarwa and Andamani tribes, Andaman tribes of tribal people communities of Andaman. He posed the following questions in his study. What are the questions? How is the way of life of those two tribes that is being handed over from generation after generation in these isolated islands? So the way of life, how that is maintained in this isolated particular region. What is the secret of their mental and community strength that help them to struggle for survival without giving any age to the encroachers? Because we know that, we have a popular belief that those who try to visit interior or try to visit the interior of Andaman and try to come closer to the Unges and Jarwa people were killed by poisonous arrows. There are some stories as well. But the question is, still, without keeping any contact with the so-called civilized and technologically advanced mainland people, how they survived. So this way, the questions are usually placed. And when you are talking about some very, very more serious kind of research, say for example, I am talking about Nigel Rappaport's study book, I Am a Dynamite. That is a very alternative approach to power, that which I am reading right now. I also find some research question in it. That is very interesting. And the book, the first chapter of the book, published by Routledge in 2003 by Nigel Rappaport. The first chapter of the book has the subheading, the book's question. The book's question. So the book starts with certain research questions. But the framing of that question is a bit different, not in an interrogative manner. Rather, it was framed in a very simple, normal, as a simple, normal statement or sentence, and starts with like this way: this book is about power, but not power as conventionally understood and represented in social science, rather than an appreciation of the structural power of what is institutional, collective, impersonal, and not individual to create, and ought to carve what is individual. This is a book about existential power of individuals to create personally meaningful and viable environments and to traverse these in the pursuit of their own life projects. So you can see the framing. This is like simple sentences. But the idea is not to simply study the power. So this way, you can have several examples of how research question is framed, how research question is posed, and they are articulated in a particular study. One study may not have so many research questions. For example, one of my research on the state of museums in West Bengal, I had a very simple question: what is the present state of present status of West Bengal museums? And in title, I have also given the findings of that this simple question, and its result has been given in my title as well, so that give an idea of what I'm going to do in my particular paper. So this way, the research question may have several strategies, several tropes to be articulated, or to articulate the research question in different manners. So so what can be then, if it is so, then what can be the ways, or how one can develop the research question? So there are certain suggestions that one may choose an interesting general topic for developing a research question, but more or most professional researchers focus on topics they are genuinely interested in studying. Do some preliminary research on your general topic. Do a few quick researches in current periodicals and journals on your topic. See, go through what are there in on this particular topic, and what issues are scholars and researchers discussing. Then it comes to your topic, whether it has come to your topic, that these issues that are in the vogue, whether they are reflected in the choice of your topic. Consider your audience for whom you are trying to do your research. Next, start asking questions, taking into consideration certain open-ended questions like how, why, question about your general topic, for example. And this way, you can develop your research question. Evaluate your question. after you have put a question or even a couple of questions, you have to evaluate these questions, measure the weight of this question, and asking yourself certain questions again. That is your questions or question is clear? Is your question clear? Is your research question focused? Is your research question complex or simple? And accordingly, you will have to mend the difficulties, mend the weak points or weak framing, poor framing of the questions. Sometimes the research questions may change their course while you are into the research. You may accordingly frame these, reframe the research question. There is no problem with it. But it is advisable that initially our research should start with some very simple but clear questions. And the research objectives must satisfy these questions. There are two ways of writing research objectives, that what you actually want to do through your research. Research questions have given you the lead. Now the objectives will clearly state it in a different framing. That by doing this research, by answering these questions, what you are going to fulfill. This is actually the objectives, or these are actually the objectives of your research. The objectives may be many or maybe single. One or two objectives may be there. But whatever may be the case, it should be addressed in your study, in your work. And for that, following that objective, you have to specify the methods you are taking to fulfill these objectives. When I'm talking about that objectives may not be many simple, let me give some examples from my own publications, own study. I have one study on the cult of Shanichar, cult of Shani, and it was published from Europe, Slovene Anthropological Society, in a journal, Anthropological Notebooks. There, in simple word, I mentioned that the present study attempts to understand under what circumstances the worship of this minor deity came into prominence and became part of the contemporary urban religious ethos. To fulfill this objective, It will include the discussion on the image, temple, behavior, devotees, votaries. Therefore, I mentioned a single objective, and to fulfill that objective, the entire study is arranged. So here lies the importance of questions, research question, which is followed by objectives, and the study is an elaboration of that objectives, answering of the research questions that you have in your mind. So this way we may proceed with our research. So with these few words, I don't have much to say. If you have any question, you may please ask me, or if you have anything, any comments, any observation on any topic, or if it is if that certain things are not properly elaborated, if you have any observation, please you may proceed. You may give your observation as well, comments as well, question as well, please.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Yes, please. Please.
Sir, good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Sharmila Banerjee. I'm from the education field. My question is that these research questions are important regarding qualitative study only. But for the quantitative research, yes, sir,
please.
you can say.
Yes,
but for the quantitative research, you have to frame the hypothesis. That is also done with the objectives kept in mind. So my question is, research questions are important in only the qualitative study.
Exactly.
And
it is basically so. Not always. I shall be answering your question. Please go ahead.
But my point is, with the quantitative research, here we collect the data, we do the test with the standardized tools or the made up tools which we standardize it, and then we prove the hypothesis, the null is kept or discarded. But qualitative research questions only gives the prediction with the theoretical version. So does it prove very correctly?
Your question is partially correct. Your question and your observation is partially correct, because not always it is that the quantitative studies only have hypotheses. In some qualitative research, you may have hypotheses. For example, I was discussing about a particular thesis, very standard particular thesis, and in that particular thesis, the scholar had certain research hypothesis as well. Though it's a qualitative study, the scholar had certain research hypothesis. Even in sociology, you will come across that people were framing some hypothesis, and they are rejecting one, accepting one and rejecting others. So it is not always true that only the quantitative studies will have hypotheses. It may be so that qualitative studies may have research hypotheses. For example, I am just quoting from the particular thesis I was referring to. It has 3 hypotheses. The study of the marine fisher folk was guided by 3 major hypotheses. Number 1, in order to cope with the very different technological tasks, the marine fisher folk will have to develop an elaborate cultural inventory or rational technological knowledge. Number 2, these were 3 hypotheses, but my point is that here each hypothesis has a null hypothesis within it. In case of quantitative research, you very clearly talk about null hypothesis in quantitative terms, but in case of qualitative research, sometimes the hypothesis, null hypothesis, may remain embedded within a hypothetical framing of a hypothesis. For example, in this particular case. So it is not true that always the quantitative researchers only will have hypothesis. The qualitative may have research hypothesis. Please.
Okay, thanks.
Next, if any one of you have any question.
Good evening, sir.
Good
sir,
evening, please.
I'm Amitabh Monik, sir. My question is, how can we ensure that our literature review is exhaustive? And secondly, is literature review more relevant in both cases? It is relevant, but is it more important in nomothetic form of